Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to create a super simple um, door opening and closing script inside of Unity, and if you want we can also make it so the door can be locked and you need a key to open it. So starting off with, I'm just going to create a 3D object of a type of plane, and I'll just reset the transform so it's in the center. Okay, so I'm just going to call this plane here ground. I'm just going to create a new folder. I'm just going to call this materials, and then I'm going to create a new material. I'll call this one ground, and let's set the color to a red, just like that. That looks pretty good. And then let's create a new 3D object of a type cube, reset the transform so it's in the center, and here we go. We got our cube here. Let's make this cube a little larger because this is going to be our door. And if you can use a real door as well, so you don't have to create your own. So you can find one online and use it. It'll work the exact same. Okay, I'd say that's a good height. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I'll create a new material, calling it door. Let's set the color to a blue. There we go. I'm also going to bring this door a bit lower to the ground. And then I'm going to just call this one door. I'm going to duplicate this door, move it over to the side, and I'm going to create a new material calling it walls, and I'm going to set the color to a green, maybe a darker kind of green. Yep. Okay, so there we go. So let's call this wall, and then I'm going to extend this wall, make it a bit larger. Let's see. Okay, there we go, that'll do. And then I'm going to bring the wall over here as well. So there we go, so we have our two walls here now, and we have our door, which is good. So now let's set up the door here. So we have our actual door, and if we choose this rotate tool and try to rotate this, you'll see it doesn't really rotate how we would expect it to. So come over to in our hierarchy, let's create an empty object. I'm going to call this object hinge, and just drag the door underneath hinge. And okay, hold on. Okay, so I'm gonna reset the position of hinge, so just so it's in the center, and then the empty object you've just created, let's kind of like drag it over our door, and then put it on the, let's take it, let's lift it up, let's put it, make sure it's on like the corner of the door, of your actual door, or on the side, or just like the left side or right side, depending on which way you want it to open from. There we go. Now let's drag the door underneath the hinge, and then if we select hinge, choose the rotate tool and try rotating it again, you can see that it will now rotate like you'd expect a door to. If that's not, make sure up here in the top left you have pivot chosen, not center, because if you use center, well, that will happen. So you need to use pivot, and then that will happen. Okay, so now we need to create an animation. So I'm going to create a new folder calling it animation. Right click, or let's go up here actually, window, animation, animation, and let's click on our hinge and let's create. And then in our animation folder, I'm going to call this one animation open. Okay, and now let's start recording it. So for the first state, it's just going to be at a all is at 0, and then let's say by 1 second the door is opened up. So let's just drag this so the door's like opened like that maybe, and there we go. So now we have our door opening animation just like that. That looks good. Okay. Whoops, I accidentally did Control Z. Did not mean to do that. Okay. So now that we have that all set up and done, let's new window, animation and animator. And then here we have the default state for the door, or the open state. Let's actually create a new state, an empty one, and I'm going to rename this state to default, and then right click, set as layer default state. And then we also have open, and then let's make a transition from default to open like that, and come up here to parameters. Let's add a new integer. I'm going to call it state, and then we're going to need two different states. Three different states, sorry. So here, when door open, let's add a condition. So if state is equal to let's say 2, so door is open, it'll go to here and no exit time. And let's make a transition back to default, and let's say if state is equal to 0, and there we go, just like that. So now we have a reverse. So now it can come back, and then let's right click over on, I'll click on animation and duplicate that, so we have another open. Let's rename this one to close, and then in animation let's just let's reverse these. So I'm going to drag this one over just a little bit and move this one over. So this one's at 1 and this one's at 0. Now if we play this, close, so close needs to be on the door. There we go, now let's play it. Now you can see close is the reverse. And now for close, if the, let's make a transition to here, if state is equal to 1, sorry, not 2, and no exit time, and then if state is equal to 0 and no exit time for the transition back. And then we also need a transition from open to close, and if state, and you can see it's 1, so if state is equal to 1 and no exit time. Okay, so that should be all of that set up, all the animations, hopefully. So now we have to go into the scripting, so let's create a new script. I'm going to call this door interaction. Let's open up this in C# in Windows Studio. Okay, so for our script, let's just remove all of these for now. And starting off with, let's have a public animator called anim, and then we need a public bool is locked, and let's default that to false. And then another private bool this time. Private bool is opened is equal to false. So if you want your door to be locked, you'll be able to change that in the inspector later on. And then we also need a private key key interaction. And then I'm just going to put a // in there for now, because we haven't done that, set this up yet, because that will cause an error. So underneath that, let's do void start, and I'm just going to remove the private because it doesn't matter, and key interaction equals get component key interaction, and bam bam. And I'm also going to put a // on there because we're going to get an error as well. And then anim equals get component animator, just like that. Now let's go back into Unity and have a look at this. So on our door, on our actual door, on our hinge actually, yeah, doing it on here will be fine. Let's add a box collider onto it, and we need to make this box collider on both sides of the door. So you can see this kind of like wireframe here. So to move the box collider, let's actually use this tool. We can move it. No, not like that. So we have to use this here, so the center thing. So let's move it on the Z, so it's kind of centered. It might be something different for you. Just move it on one of the axes and until it's right. And then okay, that looks good. And then now use this to edit the collider, and I'm going to drag this all the way down here to the bottom and make these walls a little bit larger as well. Here we go. Let's bring this collider out a bit, and same on that side. That looks pretty good. So we have enough space on both sides, and change that to isTrigger as well. Okay. So now that is a trigger, let's come over here and let's do void on trigger stay, and let's remove the private and collider other. Let's start, we start coroutine door delay. And the reason we need a coroutine is because if you're able to spam it, it can cause some bugs. So now we need to do IEnumerator door delay, and then if is locked equals false, and then if is opened is false, and then if input dot get key code dot a anim dot set integer state, and then 1. Okay, and then underneath that, yield return new wait for seconds 0.3f, and then is opened is true. Okay, just like that. And then now underneath here, so if is opened is true, and then if input.getKeyCode e, input.getKeyCode e, and then we need anim.set integer state 2, yield return new wait for seconds 0.3f, and is opened is equal to false, and anim dot set integer state 0. Okay, nice. So if this has been set up correctly, hopefully we can now interact with that door. Now, if you need a controller, a player controller, just come up here to Window, go to Package Manager, and go to My Assets. If you haven't got this asset, it'll be on the Unity Asset Store. It's called Standard Assets for Unity. Just import that into your project. If you don't have it, look on the Unity Asset Store, Standard Assets. It should be a pretty popular one. And once you've imported them, just import all of the files. Shouldn't take too long. Okay, now that that's done, you probably have an error here. Just double click on this error, and I'm just going to take all of this code and just delete that and save that script. We don't need it. Okay. Okay, so now that we have that, let's wait for this to finish. Okay, just clear all those errors. Okay, so in the assets, let's go to standard assets, characters, first person controller, or first person character prefabs, and grab the first person controller prefab, and I'm just going to drag it up like this, and let's move it into our world. There we go. And then let's delete the main camera that we already had. So if we hit play now, we should see that we're in our world. There we go. Oh yes, there's our door. I'll tell you why that's happening in a sec. So in our assets animation, go to our close and uncheck loop time, and same for open, uncheck loop time. Okay, so in our hinge, let's drag our door interaction script onto there, and the anim is the hinge itself, and is locked. We can just leave that for now. We don't need to play with that, so just leave that as blank. So hopefully if we walk up to our door and we hit E, okay, I think I got the variables the wrong way around actually. So here where it says anim.send integer 1, change that to 2, and where it says here to 2, change that to 1, and save that. Let's go back and try this again. I think I just got them mixed up. There we go. And then can we close it? We can. And we can open it. And then we can close it. Okay, so now we're going to set up the key. To do the key, super easy. Does not require that much code at all. So let's create a new game object, just a 3D cube. I'll use this as our key for now. Yeah, sure, I'll leave it as no, I don't want to leave it as white. Let's make a new material key, and I'll color this a purple or pinky kind of color, and I'm going to squash this key down a little bit. There we go, so it's a bit flatter. Okay. Now let's make a collider for this again. Let's make it a bit taller and a bit wider on all sides. Okay, there we go, that looks good. And set that to a trigger as well. Okay, so now let's make a new C# script, calling it key interaction. Let's open this up in C#, and let's delete the update, we don't need that. first. Let's create a public game object. Key object. And then we need a public door interaction. Okay, and then in the start, key object equals, or key object dot set active true, just to make sure that it is turned on when we start the game. And then underneath that, door interaction equals get component door interaction. And then let's do a new void on trigger stay, and delete the collider other if you get that there, and the private. And then we say if input dot get key code dot a key object dot set active is false, and then door interaction dot is locked equals false. Okay, so back in our door interaction script, let's get rid of these slashes we had in front of here. Hopefully we don't have any issues, and we don't, which is good. So let's go back into the editor, and on our object that we just created for our key, I'm going to just call this key as well. Let's drag our key interaction script onto there, and for the key object it's the key itself, and the door interaction is the hinge. Okay, so on our hinge script, on our hinge object, let's check is locked now and hit play. Okay, so we shouldn't be able to open the door if we press A, which it's not, which is good. So let's come and look at our key and pick it up. So it has disappeared and we pressed A on it. Now let's try opening it, and we're now able to open and close it because it is now unlocked. So that was a super simple way of creating a key script and a door opening and close script. If you have enjoyed, please hit the like button and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.